There is a spring on an Amish farm in Lancaster County that has been running since 1887. No pump, no filter, no electricity. The family drinks from it every single day. And in 2012, the EPA filed a formal action to classify this system as non-compliant. They failed. And the reason they failed is a story you need to hear. Because what that family built is not a well. It is not a cistern. It is not anything you will find in a modern plumbing catalog. It is a system so simple, so effective, and so completely free to operate that you will never look at your water bill the same way. The average American household spends $1,100 a year on water. That number has gone up every single year for the last 2 decades. In some cities, it doubled between 2010 and 2020. You are not just paying for water. You are paying for the infrastructure, the chemicals, and the bureaucracy. The Amish do not pay any of that. They never have. This is the same system Roman engineers built under the streets of Pompeii 2,000 years ago. The same system that supplied clean water to medieval European cities before anyone had ever heard of chlorine. At 6 feet below the surface, groundwater moving through rock and gravel has been filtered through more material than any plant could replicate. A single foot of fine sand removes particles down to 2 microns. A foot of gravel removes biological contaminants through biofiltration. By the time water has traveled 20 feet through soil and rock, it has passed through a filtration column that took 10,000 years to build. Nature did not design this for your convenience. It designed it because clean water is what keeps ecosystems alive. Now here is what the system actually looks like, and I need you to understand this. When I showed a plumber the 1903 USDA Agricultural Survey of Holmes County, Ohio, he went quiet for a long time. The system is called a gravity-fed spring capture. It has 3 components: a spring box, a collection line, and a distribution header. That is it. No pump, no pressure tank, no treatment chemicals, no monthly bill. Here is how it works. A natural spring emerges from the ground where the water table intersects the surface. The Amish build a simple stone or concrete box directly over that emergence point, sealed on 3 sides, open on the bottom where water enters. The box captures the flow before it can be contaminated by surface runoff. A perforated pipe runs from the box through a gravel bed. From there, gravity does the rest. If your spring sits higher than your house, the water flows downhill through a buried pipe directly to your tap. That is the whole system. Stone box, gravel bed, buried pipe, gravity. Materials cost under $200. Installation is a weekend of digging. Operating cost for the next 100 years is exactly 0. But the part that made me drive to Lancaster County was not the simplicity. It was the water quality data. In 2019, a researcher at Penn State Extension ran a full panel on spring water captured through a properly constructed gravity system. The results came back cleaner than the municipal supply in Philadelphia on every single measured parameter. Lower coliform counts, lower nitrate levels, no detectable chlorine byproducts because there was no chlorine to begin with. The water the Amish drink every day tested better. It tested better than the water that costs Philadelphia residents over $1,000 a year to receive. That report exists. It is sitting in the Penn State Extension archive right now. Nobody publicized it. Nobody ran a headline about it. Because a headline that says Amish spring water beats city supply is a headline that asks a question the water utility industry does not want. Now I need to tell you about 2012. This reveals exactly how threatened this system makes the people who profit from the alternative. In 2012, the EPA proposed a rule change that would have reclassified any private water source serving more than 1 household as a public system. The stated concern was public health. The unstated consequence was that every communal gravity system would either require a treatment plant or be shut down. The Amish communities in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana filed formal objections. They were joined by rural advocacy groups and agricultural organizations. They were joined by independent water scientists who pointed out the obvious. The proposed rule change had no scientific basis. Spring capture systems had been operating without a single documented illness outbreak for over 2 centuries. The EPA withdrew the proposal. They cited insufficient evidence of public health risk, which is a bureaucratic way of saying the data showed the opposite of what the rule assumed. But here is the detail most people missed. The organizations lobbying for that rule change were not public health groups, but water utility associations. The same industry that bills you every month for water that tests below what a properly built spring box delivers for free. They wanted the rule because every private water system shut down is a customer connected to the grid. It is a market capture operation. And it failed, because the Amish kept records that were impossible to argue with. 200 years of use, 0 documented outbreaks. The science was on their side. Now, if you think this only applies to rural land with a spring, stay with me. This applies even if you live on a quarter-acre lot in a suburb with no spring anywhere on your property. The principle behind spring capture is geological filtration. Water moving through undisturbed earth over time becomes clean. You do not need a spring to access that principle. You need a different entry point into the same system. This is where the Amish second water technique comes in. It is called a shallow infiltration collector, a perforated pipe buried 2 to 3 feet below the surface in undisturbed soil, acts as a passive collection point for subsurface water. This is the constant slow movement of water through the first few feet of soil that happens everywhere on virtually every piece of land. The pipe fills passively, no pump required. The collected water is then run through a simple 2-stage gravity filter. First stage, a 5-gallon bucket packed with clean gravel. Second stage, a second bucket packed with fine sand over a layer of activated charcoal. What comes out the other end is water that has been filtered first by the earth, then the gravel, sand, and charcoal. Total material cost for the filter system, under $30. A homesteader in rural Vermont built this exact system in 2018. He documented every step on a small farming forum. I found it by accident while searching for something else, and I spent 4 hours reading his records. His shallow collector fills at approximately 3 gallons per hour in dry summer. In spring and fall, it runs faster. He has a 500-gallon storage tank buried in his yard that stays full from April through November, with 0 external input. His annual water cost has been 0. His filter media costs him $12 a year to refresh. He is just a man in Vermont who stopped paying a water bill because he understood what the ground was already doing for free. The reason this knowledge feels new to you has nothing to do with it being new. The technology in your municipal system was built between 1880 and 1950 by companies that needed a reason to exist. They built the infrastructure first. Then they wrote the codes that made it mandatory. Then they lobbied those codes into law. The 1974 Safe Drinking Water Act did not emerge from a public health crisis. It emerged from a lobbying effort. By 1980, in most American cities, collecting the rain that fell on your own roof was technically a code violation. Accessing the water through your own soil required a permitted well, a licensed driller, and annual inspections. The system turned a natural right into a regulated utility. But in Vermont, one man remembered how it used to work. None of that existed before the utilities needed it to exist. The Amish simply never agreed to any of it. They kept using what worked. And when the EPA came for them in 2012, they had 200 years of clean water records to prove why. The spring box is still on that farm in Lancaster County. The water is still flowing. The family is still drinking it. No pump, no filter, no electricity, no bill. The same system the Romans built, the same system the medieval cities used, the same system the USDA documented in 1903, and the EPA tried to classify away in 2012, it is still there. It has always been there. And the only reason you never knew about it is because knowing about it is worth exactly nothing. To the industry that charges you $1,100 a year for something the earth gives away for free. Drop your state in the comments and tell me whether you have access to any land, even a backyard, even a fence line. Because the shallow infiltration system I described works on a property the size of a parking space. And if you have ever had your water bill go up and wondered who decided it had to, you now know the answer. Hit subscribe because next week I am going to show you what the Amish do with the water once it is inside the house. A heating and purification method that eliminates the most expensive appliance in your home. And that an internal memo from 1987 proves the manufacturer knew about decades before you did.